Unit 40. Ecology. Listening. Listen to a lecture and take notes. You all saw the news about that huge forest fire out in the national park, didn't you? Yeah, it looks like hundreds of acres have burned to the ground. It's too bad, isn't it? Actually, it's not. No, I'm not kidding. I'm 100% serious. Contrary to common belief, fires can actually be very helpful to forests. There are several reasons why, so let me cover a few. First, some trees cannot spread their seeds without heat. For example, the pine cones, which are where the seeds are, of some pine trees will simply not open unless they are subjected to extreme heat. Also, redwoods, those giants in California, spread their seeds after forest fires too. Some trees actually need fire to enable their seeds to spread. Without the spreading of their seeds, there is no way for these trees to increase in numbers. So, one tree may die, but many more are born from its sacrifice. A second example is that forest fires actually help rejuvenate forests. When they burn trees and bushes to the ground, the fires often get rid of old, weak trees. Also, by burning the trees, the fires are providing the ground with nutrients. What then happens is that a couple of years later, the places which the fire passed through are already full of new, young, strong plant life. Not only that, but the diversity of the forest also becomes greater immediately after a fire, as every tree and plant has an equal opportunity to thrive, since one species hasn't had enough time yet to crowd out the others. Compare. Listen to a sample response and compare it with yours.
The professor claims that, opposite to what most people believe, forest fires are not totally bad. He gives two reasons for this. The first one he mentions is that many trees, pine trees for instance, cannot spread their seeds without very high heat. The reason is that their pine cones won't open until they're subjected to something extremely hot. So while the forest fire may kill the tree, it can still spread countless seeds to allow new pine trees to grow. The second example cited is that forest fires help reinvigorate forests by burning down old, weak trees. After the fire ends, new, young, strong trees start growing. Also, since all the trees have an equal chance to grow afterwards, the forest is more diverse, which the professor feels is something positive.
Unit 41. Geography. Listening. Listen to a lecture and take notes.
One of the most important aspects of geography is the ability to read a map and then apply that knowledge to a practical purpose. While most people think it's rather simple, on the contrary, it's not. As an example, think about the distance between 2 points on a globe or map, as compared to the distance between the same 2 points in reality. They are, in most cases, quite different. Take a look at this globe. Let's say that you wanted to go from New York City to London. If I measure the distance with this string here, that's the distance, right? But what route do airplanes follow? The straight one? Not at all. They follow the curvature of the Earth, like this, so that they can take a much shorter trip in reality. So, you can see clearly the straight line distance between two places on a globe doesn't always equal that in reality. Okay, now let's look at this map at the distance between this point here and this point over here. Can everyone see? Good. If I measure the distance according to the map scale, it's about 150 miles as the crow flies. Not too far, right? But we're talking about actual distance. Let's consider the geographical features involved. Here's a big lake. Oops, can't drive through it. Well, we'll have to drive around it. And these mountains aren't flat, of course. Driving up and down on them on a winding road adds even more distance. So, the distances on a map and in reality are clearly different, with actual distances always being longer than the ones shown on maps.
Compare. Listen to a sample response and compare it with yours.
The professor tells the class that measuring distances is not always accurate because distances measured on globes and maps are always different from reality. She first discusses distances on a globe. She uses a string to measure the distance from New York City to London. She says that it is the straight line distance. But she says that airplanes take different routes, ones which follow the curvature of the Earth, so the trip will actually wind up being shorter in reality. She then tells the class to observe a map. She measures the distance between 2 points at 150 miles. However, she then points out the geography and mentions that a straight trip is impossible. Instead, they have to go around a lake and up and down mountains, which will make their trip longer.
Unit 42. Marketing. Listening. Listen to a lecture and take notes. Have you ever considered how much thought goes into the item display process at various stores? Quite a lot, to tell the truth. Stores are always interested in the impressions they make on their customers, so they try to display all of their products according to what various research and studies tell them. One such example of this is the fact that many stores display their most expensive items in the front. They either do that or they display their expensive items more prominently on shelves. What is the purpose of this? It's simple, really. Many people associate high costs with quality. So when they look into a store and notice the high prices of its products, they immediately associate that store with quality products. This in turn helps to bolster the company's image with its customers. Pretty ingenious, huh? So, what about the cheaper products? Companies typically put them in harder-to-find places for a couple of reasons. The first is that they don't, as a general rule, want to be associated with low prices, which often symbolize low quality to many shoppers. The second reason is actually somewhat more interesting. Many people love shopping for bargains. So when a shopper has to look around a bit to find a cheaper product, he feels more of a sense of achievement than he would have had the item been right in front of him. In his mind, he worked hard to find that lower-priced item. And, according to studies, he's more likely to purchase the product that he looked so hard for. Compare. Listen to a sample response and compare it with yours.
During his lecture, the professor emphasizes that stores put expensive and inexpensive products in different places for psychological reasons. First, he discusses expensive products. Stores usually put them in the front or make sure they are displayed very obviously so that people can see them clearly. The reason is that people believe expensive items are higher in quality, so they will have a positive image of a store selling expensive products. The second explanation deals with cheaper products. Stores usually make them harder to find. First, they don't wish to be associated with low-quality products, since those are what people often think of as inexpensive goods. And second, if a person looks hard for something and then finds it, he is more likely not to waste his effort and will therefore probably purchase that object.
How to master skills for the Toefl IBT speaking. Intermediate.
actual test. Speaking section directions. In this section of the test, you will demonstrate your ability to speak about a variety of topics. You will answer 6 questions by speaking into the microphone. Answer each of the questions as completely as possible. In questions 1 and 2, you will speak about familiar topics. Your response will be scored on your ability to speak clearly and coherently about the topics. In questions 3 and 4, you will respond to questions based on what you have read and heard. First, you will read a short text. The text will go away, and you will then listen to a talk on the same topic. You will then be asked a question about what you have read and heard. You will need to combine appropriate information from the text and the talk to provide a complete answer to the question. Your response will be scored on your ability to speak clearly and coherently, and on your ability to accurately convey information about what you read and heard. In questions 5 and 6, you will respond to questions based on what you have heard. First, you will listen to part of a conversation or a lecture. You will then be asked a question about what you have heard. Your response will be scored on your ability to speak clearly and coherently, and on your ability to accurately convey information about what you heard. You may take notes while you read and while you listen to the conversations and lectures. You may use your notes to help prepare your responses. Your notes will not be scored. Listen carefully to the directions for each question. The directions will not be shown on the paper.
Number 1. In this question, you will be asked to talk about a familiar topic. After you hear the question, you will have 15 seconds to prepare your response and 45 seconds to speak.
Choose a time in your life when you were happiest and explain why you were happiest at that time. Please include specific examples and details in your explanation. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Number 2. In this question, you will be asked to give an opinion about a familiar topic. After you have the question, you will have 15 seconds to prepare your response and 45 seconds to speak.
Some people like to buy books from a bookstore. Others like to borrow them from the library. Which do you prefer and why? Please begin speaking after the beep.
Number 3. In this question, you will read a short passage about a campus situation and then listen to a talk on the same topic. You will then answer using information from both the reading passage and the talk. After you hear the question, you will have 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak.
A department has decided to cut the number of classes it is offering. Read the announcement about the decrease. You will have 45 seconds to read the announcement. Begin reading now. Now listen to 2 students as they discuss the event.
Well, this isn't very good news.
Are you talking about the cut in the number of sculpture classes?
Yeah, I'm not too pleased about it. After all, sculpture is a required class here at the school. So how are all of the students going to be able to take it now? What about all of the seniors like me, who've waited until our last semester to sign up for it? Now we might not get in.
Well, that's your fault for waiting so long. You should have gotten rid of your required classes earlier.
Okay, well, forget about seniors then. The announcement said that the professors have too many classes to give the students personal attention.
What's your point?
Well, I think it's more important to have the classes than to get personal attention. I mean, I rarely talk to the professors in my other classes. They don't give me any personal attention. Why should sculpture be different?
Okay, you've actually got a point on that one.
Now get ready to answer the question. The man expresses his opinion of the decrease in sculpture classes. State his opinion and explain the reasons he gives for holding that opinion. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Number 4. In this question, you will read a short passage on an academic subject and then listen to a talk on the same topic. You will then answer a question using information from both the reading passage and the talk. After you hear the question, you will have 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak.
Now read the following passage about positive externality. You have 45 seconds to read the passage. Begin reading now. Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in an ecology class. As you listen, be sure to take notes.
It is unfortunate that companies do not always consider the negative ramifications of their actions. For example, sometimes they pollute the environment or inadvertently harm the health of their employees. This is where, fortunately, the government often steps in to help. Did you read in the newspaper that the city government is going to provide the Metro bus company with a low-interest loan? Anyone? Well, they're providing $1 million loan that will, help the company change some of its buses from gas guzzlers to users of electricity. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, what benefit will that have? Well, there really isn't much of a financial benefit for the company. That's why the government loaned them the money. However, there will be other positive benefits. For one, the buses will be more environmentally friendly. They won't be spewing any more nasty fumes into the atmosphere. That means that we can all breathe much cleaner air. And second of all, the buses are no longer going to rely upon gasoline, which, as we all know, Earth is running out of. So, while the company itself will see no improvement in its bottom line, its profits, its new buses will benefit everyone in the city by helping clean up the environment we all live in.
Now get ready to answer the question. The professor describes the benefits of the new buses to the environment. Explain how these benefits are related to positive externalities. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Number 5. In this question, you will listen to a conversation. You will then be asked to talk about the information in the conversation and to give your opinion about the ideas presented. After you hear the question, you will have 20 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak.
Now listen to a conversation between two students. I can't believe that we have our final exams in 2 weeks. It seems like the semester has gone by so quickly.
Yeah, I really need to get studying, but I don't have much time.
Not much time? Why not?
Well, I tutor this high school student twice a week. He lives about half an hour away from here, so I pretty much spend the entire evening helping him and therefore can't study twice a week. I've got to think of something to do.
Well, have you got any options?
I've thought about temporarily reducing the time I teach him. Just teach him for an hour each time instead of 3. But he really depends on me for his own grades, so I don't want to let him down or anything.
Yeah, but you've got to think of your grades first.
That's true. I suppose that I could find a substitute tutor for him for a couple of weeks until the exam period is over.
That sounds great. Then the both of you would get to study.
True, but he's really shy, so he might not be able to work well with another tutor. It took him a long time before he would actually open up to me.
Now get ready to answer the question. The woman suggests 2 possible solutions to her problem. Describe the problem. Then state which of the 2 solutions you prefer and explain why. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Number 6. In this question, you will listen to part of a lecture. You will then be asked to summarize important information from the lecture. After you hear the question, you will have 20 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a business class.
I imagine that at some time in most of your lives you will consider opening your own business. It may be something small like a convenience store, or it may be something much larger. Nevertheless, you'll most likely need to attract investors, especially if it's a large business. Unless you win the lottery, of course. Anyway, in order to attract investors, you'll definitely need to prepare a couple of important documents for them. One of the most important ones you'll need is a business plan. Please, don't laugh. I know that it sounds obvious, but you actually have no idea how many people simply open a business without having a solid business plan. But trust me, without one of these, the only investor you'll get is yourself, or maybe a relative. So, what is a business plan? Well, it's a comprehensive plan that includes specific content, such as the product you intend to sell, the strategy you intend to employ, and various other details concerning how you plan to, run your business. It's crucial. You'll need to have this one well thought out to get any kind of significant investment. The second thing you'll definitely require is an executive summary. You should have heard of this one too. It's merely a summary of the business plan, so obviously it's much shorter, yet it goes right to the point and explains your objectives. This is the first document you'll show any potential investors. You'll need to make it as attractive as possible because this will, hopefully, induce potential investors to read your detailed business plan and then put their own money into your project.
Now get ready to answer the question. Using points and examples from the lecture, explain the two documents that are necessary in order to convince people to invest in a new business. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Number 1. In this question, you will be asked to talk about a familiar topic. After you hear the question, you will have 15 seconds to prepare your response and 45 seconds to speak.
Choose the subject that was your favorite in high school and explain why it was your favorite. Please include specific examples and details in your answer. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Number 2. In this question, you will be asked to give an opinion about a familiar topic. After you have the question, you will have 15 seconds to prepare your response and 45 seconds to speak.
Some students prefer to eat lunch in a school cafeteria. Others prefer to make a lunch at home and take it to school. Which do you prefer and why? Please begin speaking after the beep.
Number 3. In this question, you will read a short passage about a campus situation and then listen to a talk on the same topic. You will then answer using information from both the reading passage and the talk. After you hear the question, you will have 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak.
A university is announcing a speaker at its graduation ceremony. Read the announcement about the speaker. You will have 45 seconds to read the announcement. Begin reading now. Now listen to two students as they discuss the event.
Wow, I can't wait to hear from Jonathan Davis. I've read so much about him. It'll be great to see him in person.
I'm not so sure. I think the university made a poor decision.
Why do you feel that way?
First, the school should have invited someone different, like, say, a famous teacher or professor.
What makes you say that?
Well, all Jonathan Davis has done is make money. Who cares about that? The purpose of a university is to educate people. So the school should invite a prominent educator to give the commencement address.
Well, I don't think that's too important.
I'm not finished yet. The school missed a really great opportunity to support some of its education programs. We could have gotten someone else who would have talked about how important education is. I bet Jonathan Davis only talks about how he made a lot of money for his company.
Well, why don't we just wait until graduation and see what he talks about? Then we can decide how his speech was.
Now get ready to answer the question. The woman expresses her opinion of the school's choice of commencement speakers. State her opinion and explain the reasons she gives for holding that opinion. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Number 4. In this question, you will read a short passage on an academic subject and then listen to a talk on the same topic. You will then answer a question using information from both the reading passage and the talk. After you hear the question, you will have 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak.
Now read the following passage about long-term memory. You have 45 seconds to read the passage. Begin reading now. Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic in a psychology class. As you listen, be sure to take notes.
Some of us have better memories than others, especially when considering long-term memory. But did you know that there are actually different types of memory? Sure there are. Right now, I want to talk about two types of memory: declarative memory and procedural memory. Declarative memory comprises all of the facts that you learn, like in this class. Procedural memory constitutes the actions that you learn to do, like playing a musical instrument. Let me show you how these two go hand in hand and complement each other. I'm sure you all know how to ride a bicycle. At least I hope that you do. Now, actually remembering how to ride a bicycle, even if you haven't ridden one in years, is procedural memory. But remembering the names of the parts of the bike, the wheels, handle, brakes, and so on, is declarative memory. Or how about this? I believe there's a football game tomorrow. Think about the players. All those plays that they have to remember are recalled through declarative memory. But actually running, throwing, tackling, and every other action associated with football rely upon procedural memory. And without both of them, you simply wouldn't be able to do much of anything except sit there and stare at me. Kind of like what you're doing now.
Now get ready to answer the question. The professor describes two kinds of memory and how people utilize them. Explain how they were related to long-term memory. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Number 5. In this question, you will listen to a conversation. You will then be asked to talk about the information in the conversation and to give your opinion about the ideas presented. After you hear the question, you will have 20 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak.
Now listen to a conversation between two students.
I am so frustrated these days.
What's the matter? Are you having a problem with school?
No, school is fine. It's the newspaper that's the real issue.
Oh, right. You're the editor at the school paper, aren't you? So, what's the matter?
Well, the price of the paper we use to print the news on has risen lately, but our budget hasn't. We're going to have some problems staying in business at this rate.
Well, have you considered selling more advertisements in the newspaper? You could probably make a lot of money that way.
Yeah, we could easily do that. But we already get a lot of complaints from students that we have too many ads as it is. Imagine what would happen if there were even more ads.
Yeah, that could be a problem. Then what else could you do?
Some of us at the paper think we could start charging money for the newspaper. It wouldn't be too much, just 25 cents or so each issue.
I'm kind of skeptical about that idea. You'd probably lose a lot of readers. I only read the paper when I'm at lunch or have nothing to do. If I had to pay for it, I wouldn't even bother reading it. Now get ready to answer the question. The speakers discuss two possible solutions to the woman's problem. Describe the problem and the two solutions. Then explain what you think the woman should do and why. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Number 6. In this question, you will listen to part of a lecture. You will then be asked to summarize important information from the lecture. After you hear the question, you will have 20 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a history class. I believe everyone here has heard of Johann Gutenberg, right? Of course you have. He's the man primarily responsible for the creation of the printing press in the West. Well, it was actually movable type that he created around 1450, but still we say that he invented the printing press. Anyway, his invention greatly changed people's reading habits in just a matter of decades. Now, before Gutenberg's invention, all books were handwritten. This was a long, arduous process. It might take a scribe 20 years to write out the entire Bible. Yeah, that would take a lot of dedication. And books were ridiculously expensive, too. So, obviously, there were not that many books in existence. In addition, few people could read. So, how did people read books? I guess you could say that they listened to them instead. Oftentimes, many people would gather around one person, often the only literate individual in the group, who would then read aloud to everyone, kind of like story time in elementary school. However, once books were being, mass-produced, unsurprisingly, people's reading habits began to change. First, with countless new books on the market, their prices plunged. They were still expensive, but they were affordable to the middle class. Soon, many families acquired Bibles as well as other books. This naturally led to an increase in the literacy rate, since more people were reading now. And without a need to read books aloud, people began reading books quietly by themselves, which is probably the way that most of you read today, right? Now get ready to answer the question. Using points and examples from the lecture, explain how people often read books both before and after Johann Gutenberg's invention of movable type. Please begin speaking after the beep. Task 1. Sample response.
The happiest time in my life happened when I was in elementary school. First off, I was a child, so I had very few responsibilities. I had to go to school, do my homework, and do some jobs around the house, but that was it. In general, I was free to do whatever I wanted to do. Secondly, being a child was fun. I had lots of friends and played baseball in the summer and hockey in the winter. We lived near the ocean, so we had lots of chances to go out and play on the beach. My friends and I would often camp on the beach, go on picnics, and just have a lot of fun together.
Task 2. Sample response. I prefer to buy books from bookstores rather than borrow them from libraries. Firstly, unlike libraries, bookstores always have the newest books by the best authors, so you can find many great books there. I like reading books right when they come out, and bookstores are the only places I can read newly released books. Second of all, I prefer bookstores because I like to own the books I read. That way I can read them anytime that I want. I often read books more than once, so I don't want to have to bother checking out a book from the library again and again. Instead, I can have it sitting right on my bookshelf. Task 3. Sample response.
According to the notice, the number of sculpture classes the university's Fine Arts Department will offer the next semester will decrease by 50%. The man opposes this decision for a couple of reasons. One reason he gives is that sculpture is a required course that students need to graduate. He mentions that he is a senior and has not yet taken the class, so with fewer classes available, he might not be able to get into the class, which would cause him problems when he tries to graduate. Furthermore, the man doesn't really feel that getting personal attention in a class is that important. He claims that he never gets personal instruction in his other classes, so he asks why the sculpture classes should be different and require personal attention by the professors.
Task 4. Sample response.
In the lecture, the professor focuses on a loan the city will provide to a bus company so that it can change its buses into ones that are electric-powered. She mentions that it will provide a couple of benefits. One thing she states is that the buses will become more environmentally friendly and won't pollute the air as much as gas-powered buses. She also claims that the buses won't use gasoline anymore, which is important because Earth's gasoline supply is running out. These 2 points relate to positive externalities because they are social rather than financial benefits. The professor mentions that the bus company won't make extra profits from this move. However, society itself will improve because of its move to electric-powered buses. In this case, the positive externality created is a cleaner environment.
Task 5. Sample response. The main issue for the woman is that her final exams are coming up, but because of her tutoring job, she doesn't get to study twice a week. The woman claims that she could find someone else to substitute tutor for her, and I strongly believe this is the best solution. To begin with, by getting a substitute tutor, the woman would be able to study for her tests, and her student would also be able to study as well. Additionally, while the woman mentions that her student is shy and might not take well to a new tutor, she shouldn't have to worry about that. She needs to take care of her grades as well. The student should be able to overcome his shyness for 2 weeks while the woman studies for her finals. Task 6. Sample response.
The focus of the professor's lecture is the 2 most important documents people planning to open businesses need in order to attract investors. The first explanation concerns the business plan. According to the professor, without a business plan, a person will almost never find investors. He states that a business plan is a comprehensive explanation of what the person intends to do with his business. It includes explanations on the product, strategy, and other details that pertain to the potential business. The second document the professor discusses is the executive summary. According to him, this is just a summary of the business plan, which makes it a much shorter document. The point of an executive summary is to highlight a person's business objectives and make them attractive enough to convince potential investors to read the complete business plan.
Task 1. Sample response.
My favorite subject in high school was history. To begin, I was always interested in history since I was a child. My father's uncle had fought in World War II, so our family had lots of pictures of him in uniform, and we had some of his medals. I read a lot of books about the war and became very interested in history in general. Secondly, I had 2 really good history teachers in high school. They presented the subject in an interesting manner, using lots of maps, videos, and pictures as they explained things. This made history seem more real to the students. In fact, I like history so much I want to major in it in university.
Task 2. Sample response.
I always prefer to take my lunch to school. Firstly, taking my own lunch is healthier than eating in the cafeteria. My mother always makes my lunch, so it's quite good. She always gives me sandwiches, some fruit and yogurt, or a granola bar. The sandwiches are healthy and very filling. Overall, my lunch is much better than the junk food the cafeteria often serves. The second reason I prefer to take my lunch is that the price of the food in the cafeteria is too high. In fact, the price is almost the same as a meal at a regular restaurant. So, by bringing my own lunch, I can save a lot of money every day.
Task 3. Sample response. The students talk about the announcement that Jonathan Davis, a wealthy businessman, will be giving the school's commencement speech at graduation. In the woman's mind, the school has made a poor decision in its choice of speakers. First of all, the woman believes that universities only exist to teach people, so the school should not invite a businessman. She instead feels that the school should have asked a famous educator to speak to the students. The woman then continues by saying that the school should have shown some support for its education programs. By getting a speaker to talk about education, the school could have done this. She declares that it's better for a speaker to talk about the importance of education than to talk about how much money he has made. Task 4. Sample response.
During his lecture, the professor describes two different kinds of memory. The first is procedural memory. This is the process of remembering how to do a certain activity, even after several years of not doing it. The two examples the professor mentions are recalling how to ride a bicycle and knowing how to play football while remembering how to run, throw, and tackle. The second example of memory the professor gives is declarative memory, which is remembering various facts and other information. His two examples are remembering the different parts of a bicycle and remembering the plays to run in a football game. According to the professor, both of these are long-term memories, which is the brain's ability to catalog and store information that might need to be recalled months or even years after it is learned.
Task 5. Sample response.
The woman's problem is that the paper newspapers get printed on has become more expensive, so the school newspaper needs to raise more funds to keep itself in business. The man suggests that the newspapers sell more advertisements. I believe this is the better of the two solutions. One reason she should do this is that she indicates there are many people willing to pay to place advertisements in the school's paper. This means the newspaper could raise the extra money from sponsors, not from the students. Also, in the case of people who dislike ads, it's easy to skip over any extra ads in the paper. Students uninterested in them can simply turn the page and find the articles. So they don't have to be annoyed, yet the paper can still raise more money.
Task 6. Sample response.
The professor looked into the reading habits of people before and after Johannes Gutenberg's invention of movable type in the middle of the 15th century. First, he focuses on the time before Gutenberg. The professor stresses that books were handwritten and could take years to make. This meant that there were few books, so naturally, few people could read. He states that often the one literate person in a group would read aloud to everyone. Instead of reading, therefore, most people listened. However, after Gutenberg created movable type, it became much faster and cheaper to produce books. Therefore, more middle-class people began buying books and reading them. The professor states that as more and more people became literate, they began to read silently instead of reading out loud to others.